Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about proportion ingredients. So we're going to be looking at what happens if we get a recipe for something and it tells us that it may serve 4 people, but we want it to feed 12 people because there's 12 people at our party. We want to make sure they're all fed. So let's say we looked at the recipe for a cake. Okay, so this recipe says that for this cake you might need 80 grams of flour, you might need 2 eggs, you might need 100 milliliters of milk, and maybe 30 grams worth of sugar. Now, granted, I'm not a baker, I don't know if these are the actual ingredients, but they seem to be roughly about right, so this is what we're going to go with. Let's say there's a special cake that you can bake that only requires these ingredients and nothing else. But this recipe is for one cake that serves 2 people. So it's a relatively small cake. Okay, we only have 2 people that would be able to eat this cake. What if we're at a party with 12 people, but we want to serve 12 people at this party? How do we change the amount of ingredients that we need in order to get from serving 2 people to serving 12 people? Well, originally what we have to do is see what would we have to do to the number 2 to get to 12. So 2 multiplied by something gives you 12, and that number is 6. Okay, so in order to serve 12 people, I have to have 6 times as many of all of these ingredients as I currently do. So in order to serve 12 people, I need to do 80 times 6, which is going to give me 480 grams of flour. I need to do 2 times 6, which is going to give me 12 eggs. I should probably specify that that is flour. 600 milliliters of milk, and then 180 grams of sugar would now serve 12 people. So all we've done is we've looked at what we have to serve 2 people. We've then seen what would we actually need in order to serve 12 people. We just find out what this multiplier here is. In this case it was times by 6. Sometimes it might be times by 2. So say instead of having to serve 12 people, we might have wanted to serve 4 people, in which case instead of timesing by 12 we would have times everything here, times by 6, we would have times everything by 2 to get from 2 to 4. If we would have changed this and said 6, we'd have multiplied everything here by 3, and so on. So these proportion ingredients, the first thing you want to do is find out what is your multiplier to get from the amount of people that you can serve with this recipe to the amount of people you want to serve with this recipe. Then as soon as you have this multiplier here, you can then take that multiplier and multiply by all of these ingredients. So if we wanted to serve 12 people, what we did was times all of these by 6, and then we get the list of all these ingredients and how many we need of each. So this first question, we've been given a list of ingredients for making 10 flapjacks. So we need 80 grams of rolled oats, 60 grams of butter, 30 milliliters of golden syrup, and 36 grams of light brown sugar. Work out the amount of each ingredient needed to make 15 flapjacks. So we're starting with 10. We need to somehow multiply this by something to get to 15. And the thing we're going to multiply is 1.5. Okay, if you're struggling to work these out, you could just put this in a kind of algebraic way. You could say 10 times some multiplier x must be equal to 15. So x must be 15 divided by 10, which is 1.5. But either way, you'll end up with your multiplier being 1.5. So what we're going to have to do to work out each ingredient, we're going to have to take each ingredient and multiply it all by 1.5. So rolled oats is going to be 80 times 1.5, which is going to give 120 grams. Then butter, we have 60 times 1.5, which is going to give 90 grams of butter. Then golden syrup, we originally have 30 milliliters, times that by 1.5 gives you 45 milliliters, and 36, the light brown sugar, we originally have 36 grams of it, timesing that by 1.5 is going to give 54 grams. And therefore, we have our list of everything we need. We need 120 grams of rolled oats. We need 90 grams of butter. We need 45 milliliters of golden syrup. And 54 grams of light brown sugar. So now this second question, here are the ingredients needed to make 12 shortcakes. Liz makes some shortcakes. She uses 25 milliliters of milk. How many shortcakes does Liz make? So this list of ingredients makes 12 shortcakes, and we need 10 milliliters to make 12 shortcakes. If we're now using 25 milliliters, we have to work out what is the multiplier there. So 10 times something is going to give you 25, and that something is going to be 2.5. 10 times 2.5 is equal to 25, so your multiplier is times by 2.5. And what that means is that if this is what we're doing to the milk and we're still managing to get some shortcakes, it has to be done for all of these ingredients. And if it's done for all of these ingredients, it also has to be done for the amount of shortcakes that we're making. So we have to take the 12 and then times the 12 by 2.5, and 12 times 2.5 will give you 30 shortcakes. And we have the total amount of shortcakes that Liz has made. Then there's a part B to this question where it says that Robert has 500 grams of sugar, 1,000 grams of butter, 1,000 grams of flour, 500 milliliters of milk, and they want us to work out the greatest number of shortcakes that Robert can make. Okay, so first of all, let's do a comparison between the two. So going from 50 grams on this recipe to the 500 grams means that we're timesing by 10. So if this was true, we'd have to times the 12 by 10, and so this should make 120 shortcakes. Okay, then let's check the 200. So the 200 grams is going to 1,000 grams of butter, and to get from 200 to 1,000, we're timesing by 5, and that would give you 60 shortcakes. Now this one, the 200 to 1,000, is the same for both the butter and the flour, but the last one, 10 milliliters of milk to 500 milliliters of milk, we've times by 50 here. And if we were to times 12 by 50, we would be able to make 600 shortcakes. Now we're looking for the greatest number of shortcakes that Robert can make. And what we would instantly assume is that this would have to be 600 shortcakes, since this is the biggest number that we have, and so that has to be the greatest number of shortcakes that we can make. However, if we were to make 600 shortcakes, not only would we have to multiply the number of milk by 50, the amount of milk by 50, we'd have to multiply everything else by 50. So actually, when we come to this step of figuring out what's the greatest number of shortcakes we can make, we have to make the smallest, we have to take the smallest number of these three, because this is saying that this is the biggest number we can make before we run out of one of these ingredients. As soon as we've made 60 shortcakes, we're going to run out of both butter and flour, and so we can't make any more shortcakes than that. So the greatest number, the greatest number of shortcakes is 60. Okay, 60 is our biggest number of shortcakes that we can make in this question. Okay, and finally, Fred has a recipe for 30 biscuits. Here's a list of the ingredients for these 30 biscuits. You've got some self-raising flour, some butter, some caster sugar, and some eggs. Fred wants to make 45 biscuits. Complete his new list of ingredients for 45 biscuits. So we have to think, how have we got from 30 times by what gives you 45? And the answer is 1.5. And again, if you struggle to work that one out, you could always say that 30 times x is equal to 45, and then x would be equal to 45 divided by 30, and you could simplify this by dividing by 15, and this would give 3 over 2, which is 1.5. Okay, so we're multiplying everything by 1.5. So the self-raising flour, we're going to take 230 times it by 1.5, and we are going to get 345 grams of self-raising flour. We're going to take the 150 grams of butter, multiply that by 1.5, and we're going to get 225 grams of butter. The caster sugar, we're going to take the 100 grams, times that by 1.5, we're going to get 150 grams of caster sugar, and the 2 eggs times by 1.5, we're going to get 3 eggs that we need. Okay, so now we've got a list for his new ingredients. So Gil has only 1 kilogram of self-raising flour. She has plenty of the other ingredients. Work out the maximum number of biscuits that Gil could bake. Okay, so the self-raising flour, we're starting with 230 grams, and we're going to figure out how many times does 230 grams go into 1 kilogram, which basically means we're calculating how many times can she make 30 biscuits. So if we were to put 230 times by some value, has to give 1,000, so 1 kilogram, keeping everything in grams. And that means that this value of x must be 1,000 divided by 230. Now I could cancel out those final zeros by dividing both top and bottom by 10, and that's going to become 100 divided by 23. Now 100 divided by 23 is not going to give you a whole number. In fact, it's going to give you roughly 4.348 times. And so we're going to have to say that she can make the 30 biscuits 4.348 times. So now if we do 30 multiplied by this multiplier of 4.348, and we work out what that will give you, that gives you 130.43 biscuits. Now of course we can't have 0.43 of a biscuit, so the maximum number of biscuits that Gil could bake, we have to round down and say therefore Gil could bake 130 biscuits. And that's your answer. Okay, these are the questions on the proportionality of sharing ingredients and trying to work out how many ingredients we'll need to serve some amount of people, or to make some amount of biscuits or cakes or whatever it might be. Hopefully this helps, and we'll see you next time.